Welcome everyone to Samudra Shakti Online. And we have a planning committee for Samudra Shakti Online. And it's these marvelous women, Deb Payne, myself, Maduri Martin, who's here live with us, and Kim Friedman. So tonight we do have, as Maduri said, Ellen Saltonstall here. And I'm excited as well. Ellen helped build the Anusara Therapeutics manual. In fact, we heard from Julia Paring that Ellen was like the final, push to get it done and brought her expertise forward to help create this manual. So the whole entire global Anusara community is in gratitude for Ellen stepping in. Ellen is an alignment-based yoga instructor and body therapist based in New York City with over 40 years of experience. Her background includes modern dance, a massage therapy practice, Iyengar yoga, and Anusara yoga. She was certified Anusara yoga in 2001 and then became a subject matter specialist in anatomy and therapeutics. In addition to yoga, she teaches body-mind ball work, a method of body work using rubber balls to facilitate tension release. Her published books include Yoga for Arthritis, Yoga for Osteoporosis, Anatomy and Yoga, and the Body-Mind Ball Work Method. She offers yoga therapy webinars through yogaonlineu.com. I know that. I thought it was Yoga U Online. Is it? It's Yoga U Online, isn't it, Ellen? Yeah, yogauonline.com. And she teaches nationally and internationally with a specialty in anatomy and therapeutics. She is known for her clarity and depth of knowledge, and her enthusiasm is encouraging students of all levels to find freedom and joy through yoga. So I'm going to stop my share and hand this off to Ellen, who Maduri and I have, exalted.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm so glad to be with you. Yay. So I'm going to do a little futzing here to make sure all my settings are correct. Yes, I think I'm fine for our conversation part. And then pretty soon I'll be showing you some slides. But first I wanted just to see your faces while I talk just a little bit. So our topic tonight is the hands and the wrist, which was chosen by committee. And I'm happy to do it because, as Maduri says, it's a topic that's not so commonly talked about because there's so many things that we have to talk about with the lower back and the shoulders and the knees and all those joints. But the hands and the wrists are pretty important to know about because we weight bear on the hands so much in yoga and not that much in daily life. So it's important for us as teachers, certainly because we practice a lot, and it's important for us to pass on some information and knowledge to our students. So given that our theme in Anusara, and particularly for these special programs, is the expression of the heart, I wanted us all to contemplate for a minute how the hands and the wrist in your body express you as your heart. And we'll just contemplate that for a moment, and I'll make the suggestion that you probably express yourself through your hands with your loved ones and with your pets. Patting a dog or a cat, or embracing a loved one, child or parent or partner. And then we do things like even cooking can be an expression of the heart. So just for a moment, we'll be quiet and just contemplate in your life how you express your heart through your hands. Okay. And then let's come back together. And if anybody would like to speak, you can unmute yourself and just raise your hand, and I'll call your name so that we don't have people speaking, many people at the same time. So if anybody would like to share any thoughts, or even if you want to ask us a question that you're hoping I'm going to cover in the presentation, that would also help me. So anything, comment, reflection, question about the hands and the wrist.
I was thinking about that emoji, the hug emoji is like this, right? And it's like, that's it. And it says it all.
Right. Yeah. That's nice.
I was thinking about how the hands do the work in the world. You know,
Absolutely.
yeah, and our work that's with our hands is, well, I'm hoping we want it to be originating from our heart.
Yeah, and to be offering to people. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Will, did you want to say something?
Yeah. I was contemplating at first, just the gesture, that it's not
Yes.
touching, and then thinking of my fur family, who I love so much, that full body stroke, So there's the touch, and then there's the visual and the gestures in themselves, yeah, do this to the whole spectrum.
Right. Right. Yeah, we gesture with our hands all the time. That's true. Yeah. Okay, Rebecca.
I was thinking about most forms of artistic expression. I know Will jump on
Right.
that one with me because he plays several instruments. But I mean, even if you paint or you play an instrument or you dance, your hands are crucial.
Yeah, vehicle. Exactly. Great. Anybody else want to offer an idea?
In the chat, Atta has said the namaste sign is so powerful, is what she wrote in the chat.
Yes. Yes, yes, it certainly is. Yes. So as Lisa told you, I was working on a team with the writers for the therapeutic applications of Anusara Yoga manual. We spent a lot of May and June of last summer doing it, so it was about a year ago. And it was really fun, but it was also a lot of work, and I'm so glad we did it. So I'm talking about that and then getting more specifically into the hands and the wrists. So in this manual, there are many sections. The first section is not physiological at all. It's more philosophical and explaining the methodology of Anusara Yoga. And that's a good part of the first part of the manual. And then the last section, which is about, I think, 40 pages altogether, something like that, is the technical part about doing the therapeutic applications in yoga. And we divided it up into body areas, just to make it kind of easier to approach. There's always a crossover between the body areas. And we acknowledge that all the way through. There's connections physiologically and emotionally and expressively between the different parts of the body. And everything is integrated, of course, when we practice yoga. But when we're studying and applying principles and trying to work therapeutically with a client or a student, we have to get more specific sometimes. So anyway, we decided to have the hands and the wrists be our topic for today. It's the last one in the manual. It's at the very end. Now, each body part is in that section divided into other categories. We do a little introduction to the body part, explaining how it fits in with other neighboring areas of the body and some of the crucial anatomy things that we want the teachers to know, and some of the common conditions. So those are the top 3 items that you see above the dotted line are things that you would read ahead of time and have as your background and your study guide, ongoing in your teaching. And then below the dotted line is the things that you'll actually use in a session, in a class or a private session. So that's the way it's divided up. And we're going to focus today on the toolbox, but let me just go through the other sections here. Number 4, observations. We describe the most necessary observations that you would make. Let's say a person comes in with wrist pain, for example. That's what our topic. You would need to observe their shoulders and their spine. You wouldn't just be observing their hands. You'd be observing their elbows, their shoulders, their neck. That's the kind of thing we talk about in that section. And then we talk about the key universal principles of alignment that we would be applying to this part of the body. And then we talk about contraindications, meaning if a person has such and such a condition, these are the cautions that you would need to take, to remember. And that's a very useful thing because we can't solve everything with yoga. You have to know a little bit about what you can't do and what you want to be careful of when a person is telling you their situation. And then finally, we have the toolbox, which is our name for the list of poses that we recommend to apply to this part of the body. So that's how each section of the therapeutic part of the manual is organized, with each of those 7 categories. So let's get into the hands now. So as you can see, the wrist is composed of the 2 large forearm bones that come from the elbow down to the wrist. The radius is on the thumb side and the ulna is on the pinky finger side. Radius is a lot bigger at the wrist end, and that's good for us because we weight bear a little bit more usually on the thumb side of the hand, so it's stronger that way. And then there are all these 8 little bones all packed into a small area that are called the carpal bones, and they have a gliding movement with each other. They kind of move a small amount in between, and the joint surfaces are curved in just the right way so they fit together. And then we have the metacarpals, which are in yellow here, and they are the bones that form the palm and the first part of the thumb. And then what's in blue is called the phalanges, which is the finger joints and bones. And the thumb has 2 phalanges and the rest have 3. So we have, you can see where the joints are. There's a joint between the carpals and the metacarpals. There's a joint between them at the middle of the finger, and then a joint at the tip of the finger. And that's important to know for a little bit later when we talk about the muscles. Oops, sorry about that. I went too fast. Okay, so now these are the movements of the wrist, and I'd like you to do them along with the slide. I'm going to just do each one, and you can't see me because you're looking at the slide, but let's all do flexion like that top left picture where you tip the hand down, and then extension where you tip the hand up. And let's remember that neutral is when your hand is in line with the forearm. So your hand will be pointing straight across. And then if you lift your hand up in front of you the way the lower row is doing, and with the back of the hand facing you, you tip towards the thumb. That's called radial deviation, which is bending your wrist a little bit toward the radius bone, and then ulnar deviation. So when we wave to somebody, we're doing that radial and ulnar deviation. You can try that. And then for pronation and supination, your whole hand and forearm turns with the palm up and the palm down. This picture has the fingers folded into a fist, but you can do it with your fingers extended as well. So pronation is the palm down, and supination is the palm up. And this is moving the 2 bones of your forearm over each other, which you'll see in another slide coming up soon. So those are the movements we can do in the wrist, and we really want to maintain some kind of flexibility in all those movements so that when we ask our wrists to bear weight, they're not stuck in a certain small range of motion. So on the left picture, you see the radius and ulna, and you see there's a little space between them. That's called the interosseous membrane. It's shown in pink here. And it's a connective tissue that's not terribly flexible. It's not something that you can contact consciously and say, oh, I'm going to contract that part of my arm. It's really a stabilizing feature between those 2 bones. But it has its own, possibility of causing restriction, which we'll see in an exercise a little later. So that's just the structure of the bones. You can see 1 humerus coming down to form the elbow, and then the 2 bones of the forearm, and then the 8 bones of the wrist, and then the carpals, the metacarpals, and the carpals. When you do pronation and supination, as you see on the right-hand side here, you're using special muscles that are made just for that. The pronators, there's 2 of them, one larger skinny one up by your elbow, and a smaller square-shaped one called quadratus down by your wrist. So those are the 2 muscles that turn your palm down, like say you're about to do down dog or cat-cow, or one of the many poses that we do with the hands on the floor. You're gonna turn your hand down to face down onto the floor using those muscles. And then supination, we only have one of those muscles, and that's up near the elbow. And that would be a muscle you use, say, when your hands are in the air and you're turning your hands in a certain direction. We also have fascial connections all through the body, everywhere. Some of you, I'm sure, have studied the fascia. It's a big topic in anatomy these days. And it's really an important thing to know when you're doing therapeutic yoga, because it reinforces the idea that all the different joints are connected to each other, and we need to address the body as holistically as we can. So I'm particularly fascinated by the arm lines. On the right-hand side, you see the deep arm lines, the fascial lines, which is on the front is the top picture, and on the back is the bottom picture. And we're not going to go through all the muscles. We just don't have time tonight. And that's not our focus tonight. But you get a sense of it just visually, how the hands are connected all the way up into the chest. And then on the superficial side, on the left, you see the front muscles, including the large pectoralis major, and then going down all the way through the forearm and into the fingertips. And also in the back superficial line, you have trapezius, deltoid, and then all the way down again to the fingertips. So this is something to continue to study. It's a fascinating topic, how the fascial lines affect our movements. So important thing to know about is the carpal tunnel, which is a bony structure. You see a sort of a cross section of it on the right, the large image there, where the carpal bones form a kind of curved bowl-like shape. And then there's this compartment where the nerves and tendons are passing through underneath a large ligament that you see in white on the left. And that's sometimes called the carpal ligament or the transverse ligament. And so that's the roof of the tunnel. And what happens is when we weight bear with our palms face down, as in down dog and handstand and all those poses, we put pressure on that tunnel. So one of the key things we have to learn is how to minimize the pressure on that tunnel, because what happens when it gets too much pressure is the median nerve, which is this one in yellow here, gets compressed and creates either pain or numbness or tingling in the shaded part of the hand that you see on the left. So that's the nerve that goes through the tunnel and the one that causes problems when you have carpal tunnel syndrome. But then you have to look higher. You have to look up into the neck. Here you see the brachial plexus, it's called, a group of nerves coming out of the spine at the neck. Here you see the C5, C6, C7, C8, T1. The nerves are coming out from those segments of the spine, forming a group and going down into the arm. And as they go down, they kind of wind around the elbow, and then median nerve goes through the carpal tunnel. That's the only one that does. But the nerves go, all the way to the fingertips, and we can get issues with our hands and our wrists that are started way up here in the neck, either in the neck or even in the collarbone area and the pectoral area, which we'll see a little bit later. So I had to restrain myself with muscle pictures because we could go on and on. So I have very few muscle pictures in this slideshow. And I chose this one because it has a lot of the muscles that are relevant to our topic. So here on the left, you see a lot of the flexor muscles of the wrist and the fingers and the palm. So carpi is wrist, palmaris also obviously refers to the palm. So those muscles, the belly is up in the upper half of your forearm. The tendons go down across the wrist and they attach at different places in the hand. So those muscles are really important for protecting the carpal tunnel and bringing weight up out of it as we're practicing with weight bearing. And we'll get into that again. I just wanted you to see how these muscles are located and arranged, where the belly of the muscle is up in the forearm, but the tendons go all the way through the wrist and down to the fingertips. Many other muscles in the hands, but we don't have time to get into them. So now here we have the four corners of the hand, and some of you may have tried this or done it in a different order. So just for today, try it with the sequence that I put here. So put your hand on a tabletop or desktop that you have nearby and spread your fingers like this hand is doing, just moderate spread of your fingers. And then push the root of your thumb down, that's spot number 1. Keep that down as you go across now to the base of your little finger. Now, before we go any further, just notice that in the effort to do only those two, you've engaged muscles in your palm that lift the palm up a little bit, that activate the underside of your palm. And then continue over to the base of your index finger for spot number 3, corner number 3. And then again, you've activated more muscles in the deep in the hand, and then go at keeping all those three, go out to the outer wrist, the point number 4. So that's how we can balance the weight bearing in the hand in the same way that I teach we balance it in the feet. And then of course you can add the fingertips. So there's another slide where we're going to go into this a little bit more, so I'll stop myself from saying too much. Okay, so here are the typical poses that people have trouble with if they have hand or wrist pain. And as you can see, obviously, all of them are weight-bearing poses on the hands, and many of them are weight-bearing in an extended position, which is that extension is when you draw the fingers back towards the back of your forearm. And all of them in this picture, except for downward dog, has that extension. So that accentuates the pressure into the carpal tunnel. So what we have to do is make sure we add pressure down into the fingertips and the top of the palm, where the fingers end and the palm begins. That's another important place to press down, because that activates those wrist flexor muscles that were in that picture. So as you put your hand on the surface now, do that again. Find the 4 corners. You can do it with one hand or both, whichever you want. And then touch the upper part of your forearm near your elbow and do a little extra pressure, and you'll feel those muscles contract. So those are the ones we use, again, to take pressure off the carpal tunnel. And then there's another set that I should have included that I didn't, but if you press especially your thumb and your pinky finger down and think of almost drawing those 2 fingers together, you're activating another 2 muscles that are really useful, which is the adductor muscles of the thumb and the pinky finger, which create a lift under the carpal tunnel. So these are specific actions that are really good to practice. All right, so let's review. This is actually what it says in the manual for the key alignments and actions of the hands and wrists. You find the 4 corners, which we just did. You have your wrist crease straight across. Now, that's a visual thing that's a little bit subjective, but you try to just get the wrist straight across with the center of the wrist in line with the outer shoulder. And that is also adjustable depending on a person's size and flexibility and level of experience. So I'm a little bit loose with the width of the hands, but I'm pretty definite about the wrist crease straight across. And then you have the fingers spread and appropriately angled. Now I said appropriately because some people can turn out a little more and get the advantage of having extra outer rotation in their upper arm. But my rule of thumb is that, that's a funny expression to use in this case. My rule is to point the index finger forward, which this picture actually is not doing, because these hands are too close together to be down face dog hands. But just put your hand on the table that you have there and put your index finger pointing straight ahead and spread your fingers so that there's kind of an even distance between the 4 fingers, and then about double that distance between your index finger and your thumb, with the index finger pointing forward. That's a typical position for the hand that I teach. So now the here says distal and proximal end of each finger pressing down. So distal end is the end, the tip of the finger. The proximal end of the finger is the one that it connects it to the palm. And so just practice that again and feel the muscles engaging as you do that. They're different, right? If you just press the distal end, that's one thing. If you press the proximal end by itself, that's a different thing. So you need to do both. Okay, and then from a larger perspective, we're doing shoulder loop, which I'm not going to get into very much because you all know it, and rotation of the upper and the lower arm. So this is also hopefully familiar to you. In general, we rotate the upper arms outwardly and the lower arms inwardly in order to put our palms down on the floor. So that's something that's really good to explain to a new student, because they might not think of it otherwise. And then, as always, we balance muscular energy, drawing in for stability and strength, and organic energy expanding out for freedom. So those are all the key alignments and actions. Now, the toolbox. This is our focus for today. How are we doing for time? Oh, this is good. Okay. So we're going to do the ones that are printed in red here. We're not going to do the ones in black because I think you know them and we don't have time to do them all. So they're more familiar, but I want to make sure that you understand what the ones above there, the ones in red, are, because some of them may not be familiar. So when we get to the end of the slides, that's what we're going to do. I just wanted you to see the toolbox written down. Okay, so this is an example of one of the toolbox things. This is a martial arts exercise that stretches the wrist. I call it the twisting clasp. So I just wanted you to see it visually, and I'm going to be demonstrating it again shortly. But what I like about this one is that it stretches both the joints between the little wrist bones, but also that interosseous membrane that I pointed out between the radius and the ulna, so that we have a free movement between supination and pronation. If that interosseous membrane is really taut and doesn't let that rotation happen easily, then we can try to compensate for that tightness in the wrist and perhaps have to do too much work in the wrist. And this would happen intuitively. You wouldn't decide to do that. You would just say, oh, you know, I'm trying to get my hand flat, but it's hard to do, so I'm going to press the wrist a little harder. And this is how some beginners hurt themselves. So this exercise loosens up that interosseous membrane to allow supination and pronation. And we'll be doing this later. And here's the other martial arts exercise, which is a combination of flexion, supination, and pronation. Some of you may be familiar with this. I learned this in my 20s when I practiced Aikido, and I've been doing it ever since. Okay, so these are some of the standard ways that you can work with the wrists in a yoga class. And we're going to do a couple of these. So on the upper left, you see the stretch where your fingers point downward and you're stretching the palm flexor muscles. And then the woman on all fours in the lower left, she's doing the same thing except using the floor instead of her hand, which is a little more intense. And I very frequently do this before I take students in a class into downward dog. We do this little stretch. And then on the upper right, you see this person doing what I call spider hands, where you start in the child's pose with your palms flat, and then you press into the mat so that your hand cups into this shape like a spider with legs. And you'll be using some of those palm muscles that I didn't show you by name, but there's some really nice, strong palm muscles that do that. And then the bottom right picture is going from flat hands up to what we call ridge tops. This is a really good thing to teach anyone who is having wrist problems at the time that they're taking class. You can show them that and say, you know, anytime you're able to do that instead of having your hands flat, you should do it. And then another thing I forgot to put in the slideshow is that I have these little rolls of extra sticky mat pieces that are about the size of a, you know, like a jelly roll or some, you know, I'm trying to think of an example. Anyway, they're just the size that fit just perfectly under your wrist that you can use for someone to take some of the weight off the wrist and help them while they're practicing. So another issue that comes up that's on the list of conditions in the manual is this thing called Dupu Contracture, which is a tightening of the connective tissue in the palm going into the fingers, and sometimes is associated with nodules in the tendons, which is what causes trigger finger. So people who have this issue can't straighten their fingers, and you don't want to force them to straighten the fingers. But I have had really good success with people using the balls, as we're going to do a little bit later. And here on the left, you see the large Aponeurosis, which is the name for a kind of a wide spread out tendon. And you could think of it as a connective tissue support for the palm. And we have the same thing underneath the foot. So that's just another thing that could be constricted by tension. Okay, so big danger is a beginner doing Urdhva Dhanurasana with too much wrist extension. And they just, you know, maybe feel right, you know, when they're doing it, they say, oh, no problem. And then the next day they're complaining. So in this pose, there's so many things going on that need help. First of all, her wrists are in danger because there's too much extension. And you'll see in the next slide the better placement of the blocks. She also has her feet too close together, so her lower back is in danger as well, and their feet are turned out. So anyway, I would not use blocks this way with a beginner. It's okay with maybe an intermediate student who can get a little higher in the pose. But for somebody like this, you need to do the blocks at a diagonal like this person is doing. And when they're angled, then the wrists are weight bearing at a less intense angle. And it's just so much better, so much easier. And maybe the fingers curl over the edge of the block so that the stretch doesn't go all the way to the fascia of the fingertips. And you get the advantage that way of being able to straighten your arms and go up higher in the pose without wrist pain. So if you haven't tried this, I do recommend it. When I teach it, I usually put a rolled up sticky mat or a rolled up blanket behind the blocks. She has a little ledge in the room she's in, so her blocks are going to be pretty stable. But if you don't have that ledge, it's good to just put a little support back there so you don't have the danger of the blocks falling over. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you about the ball work, and we'll do it as part of our practice session. So body-mind ball work has these benefits: increases the awareness of whatever part you're working with. It loosens the fascia and the muscles. It increases circulation, and it allows for more precise alignment. This is what I think is so good for yoga practitioners. When you have more awareness of the details of a certain part of the body, you can align it with more skill. And my latest book is all about the ball work. So there's the cover of the book. And I hope you will all pursue that because it's a great practice to go along with yoga. Now, these two types of balls are one of two of many sizes that I use in the technique. And I put them on a plate so you could see their relative size. One of them is about the size of a small orange and the other is about the size of a walnut. So we'll be using those shortly. And then this is the last slide. So I think I'll just leave this up for a moment and talk it through, and then I'll stop screen sharing and we will go on. So here you have my website and my email. I welcome emails. I'm pretty good at answering them. I'm available for workshops, which I would love to do using the manual and helping, groups of teachers or teachers and students to understand the therapeutic information that's in the manual. And it can be remote or in person. We can do a variable length of time. 3 hours is kind of a good minimum if you're going to do a part of the body and really do a good practice. But you could go up to 20 hours if you want to do lots of parts of the body. And then I have these various upcoming workshops, which are listed on my website. And I do love doing anatomy therapy segments of teacher trainings, which I do frequently, and it's a lot of fun. So if you run a teacher training and you're interested, you can contact me about that. Okay, I have one more slide, which is kind of humorous, and it's the fingerling potato hand. Okay, so first of all, let's take a moment to just stand in Tadasana and take a couple of deep breaths. As I was saying earlier, the arms are supported by the chest and the shoulders. And that is such a great place of expansion in this expression of the heart, as we all know. So let's do a couple of arm sweeps. Inhaling, swing your arms up. Exhaling, bring them back down. Once more, inhaling, expand your chest as you raise the arms. Exhaling, come down. And one more time, lift and release. And then circle your shoulders so the upper arms move forward, up and back. And it loosens up the muscles around the shoulders and the neck that tend to get so tight in daily life. And then clasp your hands behind. Draw the shoulder blades together, lifting your shoulders up just a little bit so that they can roll up and back. And then stretch your arms and move your hands a little bit away from your hips and gaze up toward the ceiling. So this is a little chest opener and shoulder stretch. And then release. And then let's do the pectoral stretch with the wall. So bring your hand against the wall, your right hand against the wall with the fingers pointing backwards and the hand placed at about shoulder level, maybe a little higher. Let's say head level, eye level. Open and lift your chest. Press into the wall lightly with your fingers and feel how that engages those muscles in the forearm that I talked about. And then begin to turn away from your hand and tip your head towards your left shoulder. So hopefully you feel a stretch across your neck and your chest and your shoulder and your arm.
Ellen, are your fingers pointing up towards the ceiling, down towards the earth, or externally rotated?
I know you can't see. They're pointing back behind me, horizontal.
Okay.
You can change that. You can change the angle of your hand if you need to or want to because of the way your wrist feels. I like to do it that way because I think it's the most intense. You can certainly point your fingers up if you want. But let's do the other side. So your fingers are pointing whichever direction you choose. You can try different things and just pick your favorite. Lift your chest, draw the shoulder blade down, and then turn away from the wall. Without walking forward and back, you're just turning in place to stretch the pectoral muscle and the deltoid and the biceps and all the way down into your fingers. And you're pressing the fingers just lightly against the wall. And then tilt your head towards your left shoulder. I'm sorry, your right shoulder. Away from the wall, basically. Okay. And then just shake your arms out. And I'm going to bring my little table and chair setup in closer so you can see. And I'm going to face you for some of this and face the table for some of it. Okay, so now you can take your hands out in front of you and make a fist. So this is flexion of the fingers. And this is a trick that I made up as I began to get arthritis in my hands. Put your index finger touching your thigh, one on each, and then curl your fingers as you roll your hand forward so that your finger makes a little loop and you're stretching each of the joints. And you can give as little or as much pressure as you want into the fingers. So that was my index finger. Now I'm going to do the second finger. So this is encouraging the fingers to be able to flex at each of the 3 joints. And then do your ring finger. And then the pinky finger. Okay, and then once again, open and close your fingers. And now let's do a finger extension. So what I do is grab one finger with the whole hand. So I wrap my fist around the whole finger. I'm doing my index finger now. And I have my thumb at the back of the hand so that I can pull back and stretch that one finger all by itself. And I point the other fingers forward. So this is a very particular stretch for the base of the finger joint. And then you do the second one. It's amazing how tight those joints can be, isn't it? I mean, as we were saying earlier, we use the hands so much during the day. So now your ring finger and then your pinky finger.
Ellen, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Are we putting a traction or extension on each finger before we pull it back?
Yes, yes. Yes, as much as you can. And then do the same with the thumb. And the thumb has a different type of joint. So you have to experiment with exactly what angle is going to feel right. It's kind of a diagonal to do that with the thumb. Okay, and then just shake your hands out. Maybe feel the difference between the 2 hands since you've done one but not the other. And now let's do extension of the other one. So I'm going to start with my index finger. I pull the finger back, pressing the back of the joint with my other thumb. And then I point the other fingers forward, so that accentuates the stretch. Just the way when we do pigeon pose, we accentuate the hip stretch by taking the legs in 2 opposite directions. Okay, and then do the second finger. And then the ring finger. And then the pinky finger. And then the thumb. So with the thumb, you can actually do a nice moving stretch by taking it through its range of motion. This is a good thing to do. So it's, again, it's at a diagonal. I don't know if you can see, but I'm sure you'll find it just by working this way with your own thumb. Okay, now let's do the palm and all the fingers together. And this is one that you saw a picture of in the slides. You put your hand out as if you're offering someone something, and then you point the fingers down and put your other hand in place to pull the fingers back more. So this is wrist extension. With the two forearm bones uncrossed, the two bones of your forearm are side by side right now. They're in supination, which is what we call the neutral of the forearm. Okay, and let's do the other hand like that, and then we'll do the opposite kind of stretch. So palm up, facing, reaching the hand forward, point your fingers down, and then pull the fingers back. Now, here I am resting on my other, on the leg, and then I'm gonna push my arm forward. So I'm doing.
Question?
Yeah.
On this one, are we trying to minimize the retinaculum bulge by pulling back on the forearm, or are we allowing the root to go forward?
Yes, but don't overdo that. You can overdo it so much you don't get a stretch.
Okay.
Thanks for that question. Now, let's do this kind of stretch, which is more the position that we take in many of the poses. So here, I am going to say, yes, do that opposite motion. So I'm going to describe it. So now, right now, when you put your hand forward like this, as if you're saying stop to someone, your forearm bones are crossed. They're in pronation. You're going to take your fingers, pull them back with the other hand, but press the palm forward. So you're trying to balance the amount of stretch you get in the fingers, the palm, and the wrist. So there's some stretch in all of those places, but you're still protecting the wrist, as the questioner was just referring to, so that the retinaculum doesn't protrude. Okay, and then shake out, and we'll do that same stretch on the other side. So you put your hand facing forward, palm down, bring the fingers up so you're in this position as if you're saying stop. Put your other hand on the fingers, pull them back, but press forward with your palm. And you have to gauge exactly how hard to pull with your fingers so you get the right amount of stretch across the base of the fingers, the palm, and the wrist without pressure into that wrist area in a dangerous way. So it's a balanced push and pull, basically. Okay, now shake out. And I think I'm going to bring my tabletop to face you. I think that might be the clearest way to do this next part. So now I want to do finger push-ups, which you saw a picture of a person was doing child's pose. So you put your fingers flat as if you're doing, you're about to do down dog, say, and then you press into the fingertips so that the wrists lift up. And this is what I call spider hands or finger push-ups. This is a really good basic exercise to protect the wrists. And you'll feel a lot of muscles in your palms working, your finger flexor muscles are working, and those muscles that oppose the pinky finger and the thumb, which are the specialty of humans. We can grasp things. Okay, so that's finger push-ups, in case you didn't know what that meant in the manual. And now I wanted to remind you about ridge tops. So I'm going to stand up to show you this one. Here I am as if I'm going to go into downward dog with my hands flat, but then I lift the wrist and the palm up, so the thumb is actually not really touching very much, but the fingers are bearing quite a bit of weight, and the wrists are in neutral. So you put just a little extra weight on the index finger side, not so much on the pinky finger side. And the reason for that is so that the bone weight bearing through the radius bone of the forearm is more in play. And that's, as I pointed out earlier, that's the stronger bone of the two forearm bones. So you want the inner wrist to bear a little bit more weight than the outer wrist in these positions. So this is ridge tops, and it's a really good thing for people to know who have pain when they have the hands flat. All right, now we're going to do the martial arts stretches. So I'm going to move the table aside. And you can do this standing up if you want. I'm going to do it sitting because I can be closer to the camera. Okay, so the first one is goes like this. You take your hand up and you face your palm towards your face. You put your other hand over it so that your fingers are wrapping around to the sides of the wrist. And then you twist your hand so that the palm is facing to the side. And you've done quite a strong twist of your wrist. And then you have to remind yourself not to contort your shoulders. And then you take your hand up and then down carefully so you don't go too far or too hard. Don't push this in a harsh way at all. You're just trying to go to the edge of your range of motion going downward so that you're doing a flexion and a twisting action simultaneously. And then just do that again a couple of times. And this is a standard martial arts exercise. So this is one of the ones that twists those two forearm bones that I was talking about earlier. Let's do that on the other side. You place your palm towards you, turn it a little further to the side. So it's whatever hand it is, you're pointing the palm towards that same side. And then your other hand is stabilizing the hand in that position. And then you slowly bring your hand down so that you're bending at the wrist and your elbow shifts over to the side a little bit. And it gives you a strong stretch in the wrist and the forearm bones. So that's one half of this little exercise. Here's the other half. You put your hand out in front of you with the palm facing to the side. Put your other hand on top, and then bring your hand in with your elbows widening. So your second hand, which is the stabilizing hand, is keeping your orientation of the hand such that the thumb faces down and the pinky finger faces up. And then you bring the hand in. And of course, you know, if it's painful or difficult, you just go in a little bit. And if you want to work more, you go in a little further. So you can feel that this is twisting your forearm plus bending the wrist. Let's do the other side. So the hand faces the palm to the side with the thumb pointing down. Put your other hand over it and then bring them in. And you can point both elbows out to the side, but that's not as important as just keeping the hand oriented in this side facing position. And then shake. Okay, so now we're going to do the balls. Okay, I'm going to bring the table in. And then we'll have time for questions. So keep in mind any questions that have come to you as we've been practicing. So we'll do the forearms first using these multicolored balls that I call the rainbow balls. And you can use either one or two. They're about the same size as a pinky ball, which some people know. And this is going to be massaging the flexor muscles of the forearm. So you just put your forearm down on the balls, put your other hand over, perhaps at the wrist, and then you roll very slowly over those flexor muscles. So you can start going along in the longitudinal direction of the bone of your forearm, the bones, but then you can also do a crisscrossing motion that is giving some cross friction to the muscles. Now, if you want to get to the other side of the arm, which is a good thing to try, you can turn your palm up and kind of maneuver so that the extensor muscles are on the ball. And again, use your other hand to help guide the arm to move slowly. Now for this one, yeah, again, you can use one ball or two. And you can also do this lying down, which is very nice. It's in the book. I decided not to show it to you in this video because in this program, because we just don't have time to do all the setup on the floor, and it's easier to do on the table for right now. But there's I think 3 or 4 different ways to do the forearms in my book. Okay, so let's just feel the 2 arms, maybe shake your arms. And then let's do the other side, the other arm. So place the forearm on the balls. Use your other hand to stabilize and very slowly move the balls along the arm. So this technique works by having the pressure of the ball plus the movement, opening up the fascia, bringing more awareness, more sensory connection to the area, loosening the fascia, and increasing the circulation. All of those things are happening, and it's really good to go slowly. You can go cross friction by moving forward and back. And if it feels too much to have two balls, you can just use one, it's fine. When I ask people to purchase the balls, I always recommend that you buy two of any given size because there's so many techniques that we do with two balls. All right, and now you're going to turn the arm over so that your palm is facing up, and you have to lean a little bit to that direction, and then work the balls along the extensor muscles of your forearm. These are sometimes very tender, and if they are, that's a sign that the muscles have been tight for quite a long time, and they will eventually loosen if you do this on a regular basis. Okay, so let's finish up with the forearms. And just hang your arms by your side or put them in your lap and feel any sensation that you can find there. Perhaps some new sensation, perhaps a feeling of prana, energy moving more in those areas. So again, as I said, I think the ball work really helps to give you the skill to work your alignment very specifically, because you're more aware of all the different little sensations and connections in the part of the body that you worked with. So now you can take one of the little balls. We're going to use just one to start out with. Put it in the center of your palm. I mean, your palm is facing down and the ball is there. And then you put the other hand on top and you do very small circles around the palm. And then you go over to the thumb, which is really an important place, especially for those who have arthritis in the hands. Usually starts in the thumb. So you can go around the whole lower joint of the thumb there where it connects into the wrist. And then go down the length of the thumb too. And then back to the palm again and go over to the base of the index finger. And go down the length of that finger, using the other hand to give a little more pressure. And then go in the web between the index finger and the second finger. And then along the length of the second finger. And then go in the web between the second finger and the ring finger. And down the length of the ring finger. And the web between fourth finger and pinky finger. And then down the length of the pinky finger. And now go down that outer edge of the hand, back and forth a couple of times from the base of your pinky finger to the outer wrist. This is going along the fifth metacarpal. And there's quite a nice little bunch of muscles there that are important for weight bearing, so we're working on them. And then you go across the wrist. So as we saw in one of those early pictures in the slides, the wrist itself is a very small area. Those 8 little carpal bones are packed into a pretty small space, but they do have movement between them. And then go back to the center of the hand again. And just go a couple times around. Okay. And then put both hands on your tabletop or desktop or a sticky mat, whatever you have, and see if you feel any increased sensitivity in the hand that you just worked on with the ball. Perhaps a little more ability to choose where your weight is pressing into the fingers in the palm. Okay, let's do the other hand. So start in the middle of the palm and make a couple of little circles around. And then go to the base of the thumb, slowly working your way around in a kind of a half circle around that joint. And then down the length of the thumb. And over to that space between the thumb and the index finger. And then on to the joint of the index finger, the base, and all the way down the length of the finger. So as you probably can tell, using your second hand helps you to move slower, and it helps you give some weight to it, because just your hand by itself is not very much weight. And then you go to the web between the index finger and the second finger, and then go to the second finger all the way up and down it. And the web between second and third, and then down that ring finger to the tip. And then between the ring finger and the pinky, and all the way down the ring finger, the pinky finger. And then go into the outer edge of the hand, where you have the batch of muscles that helps us stabilize when the hands are flat. And then go across the wrist itself. Little packet of 8 small bones packed in there that have a little bit of movement between them and a lot of movement between a couple of them and the forearm bones, the radius and the ulna. And then go back to the middle of the palm. So you may be wondering why I suggested that you buy 2 balls, because we've only been using 1. And that's because these balls work really well on the feet, and you can do both feet at once if you're able to balance. And you can read about that in my book, or see some, I have a YouTube channel that has a lot of different videos about the ball work. So let's just try one more thing with the hand, where you can put the ball between your 2 hands and just do a kind of a kneading motion for anybody who needs bread dough or muffin dough or pastry dough. You know, this is the way you would rub between your 2 hands. And this is a really nice way to get into the thumb joints both at once. I've used this a lot, having arthritis in my hands. So I have these balls situated all over the house, and I can just do it quickly if I have a minute and my hands are sore. Okay, so we're done with my presentation.
Thank you, Ellen.
Oh, thank you, Lisa, for facilitating. Thank you so much. And thank you, Midori. And thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. It's been really great to see your faces and connect with you in this way. And I hope we can connect in the future. So please do reach out to me by email. I'm happy to have conversations about any of the material or any other questions you have about the manual. And I'd be happy to come to teach a workshop at your studio. So I'll just say thank you and namaste.